Hello, everybody. It is the 2nd of May, 2018. We have a lot of questions on tonight's Zoom call to go over. So let's get started. At the end, I'll open it up for questions. If you just joined us, you are muted. And now I know that if we start getting feedback, somebody jumped on and I have to mute everybody again. So I'm learning this whole technology as we go. So some questions we have. Here's one question. Do you have something for sleep? I have a hard time going to sleep and staying asleep. This is a loaded question because there's so many possible causes of inability to fall asleep and stay asleep. Really, I have a hard time falling asleep is a totally different problem than someone who wakes up and then can't go to sleep. So if you are somebody who is waking up and then and can't fall asleep, that is, let's just walk through some possibilities here because there's a lot of different possibilities um, when we talk about sleep issues. So number one is I can't fall asleep. I go to bed. That's what's called insomnia. When it's time to go to bed, it's really my time to go to bed. I got to get up at 6 o'clock and it's 10:30. I'm going to bed. And you lay in bed for an hour or so before you can fall asleep. That's insomnia. So insomnia can be caused from multiple things there. We've spoken about in past Zoom calls stop looking at screen time several hours before bed because watching a screen like a computer screen or your phone screen or a television screen, the screens are functioning at a very high hertz. 50 to 60 hertz is what they're functioning at. That is in training your brain at 50 to 60 hertz. Your brain waves are only supposed to be functioning at the highest hertz of about 28 hertz, which is a high beta wave. So you're training your brain at a super high beta wave. Of course, your brain can't go that high, but you're training your brain to be a high beta wave. Nobody can fall asleep in a high beta wave. You have to get down to a theta wave to get to sleep, somewhere between 5 and 15 hertz to be able to start to fall asleep. So it's difficult to be looking at your phone and then it's time to go to bed, so you put your phone by your side of your bed and you try to go to sleep. That in itself doesn't allow your brain to get to a theta wave to get to sleep. That in itself can be a problem. So number one, if you can't fall asleep, stop using screens several hours before you go to bed. Well, I do that already and I still can't fall asleep. Okay. The other thing that could be taking place is they have a little teeny gland in your brain called your pineal gland that's supposed to be secreting melatonin at the time before you're supposed to go to sleep. So you can use some melatonin. It's typically recommended that we use about 3 milligrams of melatonin about a half hour before bed to help fall asleep. Now we have melatonin in our store. We also have a product called Insomnitol in our store that has some melatonin, has some valerian root, and some other herbs that can be very calming to help you fall asleep. So number one, screen time. Number two, low melatonin levels. Melatonin levels are also controlled and go along with in an inverse relationship with cortisol. Cortisol is a stress hormone. So if I'm under a lot of stress, this is why if you have ever been under a lot of stress, it's difficult for you to fall asleep. So it is because if you have a lot of stress, you have a lot of cortisol secreted, and then if you have a lot of cortisol flying through your bloodstream, you won't make melatonin or you won't release melatonin from the pineal gland, and then it's going to be difficult to fall asleep. So dealing with stress levels, that's why sometimes people do better exercising at night before bed because it can help burn off some of that cortisol, and that helps their body release melatonin to help them fall asleep. So exercising before bed can be beneficial in that case. There's other reasons why you can't fall asleep, and we could talk for a long time on just the sleep patterns. Now, waking up in the middle of the night and not being able to fall back asleep has to do with other issues that can be very complex too, but usually are not related to melatonin. They can be related to adrenal burnout because so at night you're in a fasting state. So you haven't eaten since 9 o'clock or something like that. And now you're fasting. But there's one part of your body that needs glucose all night long. Your muscles don't need a lot of glucose because you're not exercising. The rest of your body doesn't need a lot of glucose, so you're not doing a whole lot of activity. Things are in a stall mode while you're sleeping, but your brain is always active. In order for your brain to continue to be active, it needs glucose. Your adrenals release cortisol at night to stimulate the glucose breakdown of glycogen stores in the liver to keep a steady glucose level to keep your brain alive. So when a person says, I wake up about 1 or 2, I fall asleep just fine. I wake up about 1 or 2 o'clock and I can't fall back asleep again. That's usually because their adrenals are deficient. Probably because of past stress, maybe current stress, but their adrenals are deficient. So they need some adaptogens or some adrenal support. And if you can support the adrenal to get back healthy adrenals again, then all that whole system can start working again. There can be some other things with some mineral deficiency that can cause a person to not be able to fall asleep or not be able to get back asleep at night either. And as this little diagram talks about leg cramps, that would be the mineral deficiency issues. Acid reflux, well, that's goes back to gut health. Um, and other issues like pain. So pain can be an issue that keeps a person up and doesn't allow them to get back asleep. I would suggest if you really have issues with insomnia and sleep patterns, that you do call and make an appointment to talk about them if you can't deal with it, can't figure it out with some of the brief things I spoke about here. Another thing to try is the insomnia programs on your Rife. We've had people say they've tried them and it didn't help at all. We've had other people say they tried them and it was a miracle thing for them. So melatonin, think about that. Side note on that, high dose melatonin has been shown in several studies that it's been helpful for some cancer patients to help with their cancer. So melatonin is not contraindicated for cancer patients. It can be helpful for cancer patients. So I would not discourage you from trying melatonin, thinking, oh, I don't want to do that, then I'm going to be dependent upon it. It can be good for your cancer. So I would say definitely try melatonin. Insomnusol product we've had a lot of people with very good success with that. There's a whole bunch of other reasons why a person isn't falling asleep. Well, part of it has to do with glutamate levels. Hopefully with most of our cancer patients, we have been working on reducing glutamate levels because high glutamates will keep you awake. That's a neurotransmitter, that's an excitatory neurotransmitter for your brain. So hopefully you're already working on glutamate levels, so that's not the piece that's keeping you awake, because remember, glutamate converts to glutamine and feeds cancer, so we don't want high levels there for other reasons. But if you have more trouble that didn't answer here, maybe we could get into it on a whole call itself. But I know I addressed some of these in other Zoom calls as well. Next question. I've been reading a lot about curcumin and what it does for cancer. Should I be taking curcumin? So number one, remember, we put your protocol together because that's what it tested for you. I'm not opposed to people adding supplements to the protocol that I created. Matter of fact, I'm not God, and you have to do what God is leading you to do. So I have some patients that I strongly recommend that they don't be taking X, Y, and Z supplements, and yet they still take them because they feel led to do so. Well, I'm all in support of what you have to do. So I don't know everything, and you have to do what God's leading you to do. That being said, curcumin is one of those that everybody could take. So curcumin is the active form of the nutraceutical that's found in turmeric. Turmeric is an Indian spice. You can take turmeric directly as a spice, but it doesn't absorb very well. You're taking it with black pepper, and a fat helps that. The fat actually helps the absorption. The black pepper helps the half-life in your body. We use a curcumin that is in a form that is readily absorbed and has a longer half-life. It's a C3 reduct, a tetrahydrocurcuminoid. But that's the product that we have. So I have multiple videos just on curcumin, and you can find those on the resources page of our website. So I am a huge fan of curcumin. Curcumin is very good for a lot of different things. Curcumin is good to help decrease tumor metastasis, decrease tumor cell growth. It's known to stimulate apoptosis. And most people use curcumin for just inflammation, to decrease inflammation. Very, very helpful. So I am very pro-curcumin. We have our own C3 curcumin. It's called CurcuClear. And each capsule is equivalent to about 1 gram curcumin. So typically when you're dealing with cancer, 1 to 3 grams is fine. Some cancers like multiple myeloma have been shown to need more and do real well with more. We have many multiple myeloma patients. Some of them have tested out fantastic on it, and we have them on up to 8 grams of curcumin. So that's a lot, but it's been shown to be very helpful. Can you take too much curcumin? You can take too much anything. So yes, so if you haven't tested for it, meaning with me, I'd say 1 to 3 grams should be your maximum dose. Next question, what are the best things to do after removing a cancerous tumor? So what's the best thing to do after surgery really is the question. If I have surgery and I have a cancer diagnosis, what should I do? Well, I made a video, maybe it isn't published yet. It's a blog post. I don't think I scheduled to publish it. It's not going to be published for a week. So lots of times I'll write blog posts and I'll put them out in time so that my blogs come out in a series. But it's on dealing with surgery. There's a new study that just came out that actually confirms something that I've said 100 times, that we don't want to have elective surgeries if we can help it when we have a cancer diagnosis. That's why I've been told, I've told you guys multiple times that I'm not a big fan of, okay, I had mastectomy because I had breast cancer, but now I'm going to have surgery to have breast implants. And I understand I'm not a woman and I don't know what it's like to have to not have breasts and all the emotions that go along with that. But when we perform a surgery of any kind, even to remove a cancerous tumor, the way your body has to heal itself is to upregulate IGF-1. Remember, IGF-1 is your growth hormone initiator. So IGF-1 levels are how you heal. So if I even cut myself, how do I heal that cut? IGF-1 levels are upregulated, meaning increased, and that stimulates an increase in that mTOR pathway. Remember, we've spoken about that ad nauseum. So when we upregulate the mTOR pathway, it increases my ability to heal. That wound is scarred over, and I heal nicely and go, wow, look at I healed so well. That's wonderful. But you did so by upregulating mTOR and IGF-1 pathways. When you upregulate mTOR and IGF-1 pathways with a cancer diagnosis, it is, I hate to say it, but it is like throwing gasoline on a fire. So we want to do things to downregulate the mTOR and IGF-1 after surgery. So the best way to downregulate mTOR and IGF-1 is through fasting. But I'll say it again, cancer patients cannot fast more than 24 hours at a time if we're talking about a true water fast. That's why we talked about doing intermittent fasting or what's called time-restricted eating. So you actually are fasting every day, but it's only a fast of maybe 16 to 20 hours a day. If your time-restricted eating is limited to 4 to 8 hour window. So if you're eating within a 4-hour window, which would be a pretty tight time-restricted eating window, that means you're fasting 20 hours a day, which would be a great thing for cancer because you'll have downregulated IGF-1, downregulated mTOR, downregulated PDKs. You could get the same benefit by using the fasting mimicking diet. So you go on the fasting mimicking diet 5 days a month, and you stick to the diet that we put you on, you're going to have downregulated IGF-1, downregulated mTOR, downregulated PDK. You do not want to go on a water fast for more than 24 hours if you have cancer because it'll upregulate IGF-1. The only exception to that is if you're doing chemo and you're going on a water fast the day previous to the chemo and then the day of chemo. It's a lot of information. If you have questions, you can post another question on Facebook, rewind this video and listen to that again. The best way to heal from a surgery, if you have cancer, is to try to downregulate, keep a handle on IGF-1 and mTOR, and you do that through the fasting mimicking diet. That answers that. That will help. So if you have more questions on that, feel free to call or to ask on Facebook. Next question, in my situation, of course, would you recommend doing another IvyGene test in 3 months? So the answer is, everybody's different, right? So if a person was diagnosed with cancer before they came to us, which was obviously everybody, and we do an IvyGene test, and let's say they were stage 2 cancer, and we do an IvyGene test, and they're below 20, so they're at, let's say, a 16, and they're feeling great. We don't know what they were before, but if they were stage 2, stage 3, stage 4, they were for sure above 20 at some point in time. So now they're below 20. And that's great. My one word of caution that maybe I don't make this well spoken enough is that do not get complacent with your protocols. I have seen, doing this for 20 years that I've been doing this now with cancer patients, I've had cancer patients stage 4 that were given 3 weeks to live. 2 years later, they're feeling great. We had one guy, he had a back brace on. He couldn't barely walk. He was in a full body, one of those plastic strap braces all over his back because he had cancer all through his spine, all through his body. They gave him weeks to live. This was 2.5 years after that. He had no body brace or anything anymore. I hadn't seen him for about 6 months. He comes in my office literally and falls onto, and I'm not exaggerating, falls onto the front desk, nearly falling down with this great bang, bang, bang. And I like, oh my gosh, what's going on? I ran out to the front. This is my other office. What's the matter? And he was like collapsing. And his wife, who had driven him there, had parked the car, came in and said, he's doing really bad. He's doing bad. He stopped using the Rife 3 months ago and stopped taking his stuff 4 months ago because he was convinced that Dr. Connors cured him of his cancer. Well, first of all, I've never, ever, ever told anybody that they're cured of cancer because I don't even believe that. And number 2, I didn't do anything. So I don't cure anybody. And, that's just the facts. Do not stop what you're doing. I don't care how good you feel. I don't care how good your IvyGene test comes back. So rule number 1, do not stop what you're doing. Rule number 2 is, when should I do another IvyGene test? Well, really the only honest answer is, it depends on how deep your pockets are. So it's $450 to do the test. If money is not really an issue and you've been blessed, you may want to do a test every month. But still, even at that, it might be overkill. If you're doing really well, and your score was a 16, do you really need to do it every month? No, but if you want to make sure that you're going to catch it if it's going the wrong way, it might be good. So when I say 3 months, I'm just guessing 2. So there is no protocol here. So this is a very new test. We're creating protocol as we go here. So is it 3 months a good window? It seems reasonable to me. How are you doing? How are you feeling? If there's a turn for the worse in that category, meaning like, I don't know what's wrong with me. I just feel like I'm dragging again. I don't know what's wrong with me. Well, if you can't get in here to get tested again, then maybe we should run another IvyGene test. So everybody's a little bit different. You're going to have to make the call. I'll give you a range. 1 to 3 months would be a good range for everybody. I don't care what your score is. But certainly if your symptoms take a turn for the worse, you should do it before that. Next question. My oncologist recommended drinking tea from Graviola leaves to fight cancer. First of all, I want to know your oncologist's name because I have never heard an oncologist recommend anything natural. That is fantastic. Do you have knowledge or an opinion of this? Good question. I think Graviola is great. Graviola is, or soursop is in our medicinal mushroom #1, our miracle mix #1. So we test people on this. So if you're, well, I'm not taking that, well, then you probably don't need Graviola. So again, this gets back to the should I take curcumin, except I'm much more in favor of you taking curcumin even though it didn't test on you versus taking Graviola. So understand, I put this little thing in here because it says anti-cancer fruit, 10,000 times more strong than chemotherapy in killing cancer cells. I put this in here because I was looking for a picture of Graviola. I found this, and this is a warning. Okay, when you start seeing these on your Facebook feeds and stuff, oh, this fruit or this herb kills cancer in 98% of cases. Okay, that's a giant red flag for me because those are just lies. Because if you could put cancer in a petri dish and then you put Graviola in there, it would probably kill it. But if you put cancer in a petri dish and you just left it for a few days, it would probably die too. So you got to be careful of these kind of things. That's all I'm saying. Don't um, don't fall prey to things like this, like, oh my gosh, I better be taking Graviola because it's the best thing in the world. It is a great thing. If you are taking our medicinal mushrooms, you already are taking Graviola. So just so you know that. If you did not test for mushrooms, and I don't have you on that, and you're not taking it outside of what I gave you, then you're not taking it. I don't have trouble you taking it if you feel led to do that. No, you don't. Actually, I got the name of the doctor. Oh, it's from Cancer Treatment Centers of America. So that makes a little bit more sense. They're much more following their own protocol. And he says that, and chatted me, whoever gave me this question, that that doctor is also in favor of medical marijuana. Great, fantastic. So you got some, this is one of the beautiful things. I never tell anybody that oncologists are mean, awful people that just want to give you drugs. It's just oncologists are typically locked into a system where they don't really have any other choice. So remember, when I got my degree, my fellowship in integrative cancer therapy, everybody else was in the medical profession there. And I asked, when I was asked them, oh, this is great that you can use this in your practice. The startling comment that I got, and I was a little naive at the time, was that they said, no, we can't. We can't use any of this in our practice. We're just learning this for our family. Because they literally have their hands tied in what they can recommend, or they will lose their job. So they don't, it's not that they're all just bad people trying to push chemotherapy drugs on you that you might not want. Now, there is some that fall into that category, I'm sure. It's just they don't have any other choice. And so, partly, in order to justify their position and what they do, they just don't learn this stuff. They can't use it anyhow. So yes, Graviola is a great thing to help with cancer, but there's 100 other great things that we test for to help fight cancer. But on every one of those things, everything that we use, there's probably some little graphic that's floating around the internet that says something exactly like this, that it kills cancer in 95% of the people. They're just lies. So just don't buy into these kind of things either. So have a balance there in everything you do. Another question, can you share your daughter's recipe for homemade sunscreen? Well, I didn't have time to contact her for homemade sunscreen. All I did is Google it. So here is a recipe for homemade sunscreen. On this slide, it talks about the SPF features of almond oil, coconut oil, zinc oxide. You do not want to use the nanonized zinc oxide, because it's absorbed, and that's what can be dangerous. That's what's in the store-bought, not the natural ones, but the store-bought sunscreens. Red raspberry seed oil, carrot seed oil, shea butter, and how much you use of these things, then it's going to give you more of an SPF protection. But here's some sunscreen ingredients. I'll leave this up on the screen while we talk about any other questions, and I'm going to open it up. So you can look at this and save this for later, and you can certainly Google it as well. So, all right, so now I open it up. Everybody is unmuted. Does anybody have any questions about what we spoke about or anything else?
Dr. Connors?
Uh-huh.
I have a question about the lymphatic system and all the detoxing. I mean, I guess with everything that we're doing, like I'm doing the infrared sauna and then the Rife and then the food and the juicing and enemas. So a lot of detoxing. So I get bouts of fatigue, you know, overall I feel good, and then I'll get bouts of fatigue. And then when I was at my functional doctor on the bioresonance machine, it showed my lymphatic was sluggish. I jump on the trampoline. So my question is, can the detox, of course, make us fatigued? And can it slug up the lymphatic system?
Good question. All right. So what is detoxification? So detoxification is getting bad things out of your body that we don't want in our body, right? So where are these bad things that we're trying to get out of the body? So everyday detox is what's taking place. So let's take a step back. In a perfect world, you're exposed to different toxins. So even 300 years ago, you're exposed to toxins. Maybe not the same ones that we are exposed to now. There was no Monsanto. There was no fertilizer. There were no chemicals sprayed on fields. But there was coal burned for heat all the time. So there was a lot of byproducts of coal in the air. You look at old pictures of cities, and they're black, and the city, the bricks of the building were black and such, because coal was burned everywhere. There were other toxins that they were exposed to, not maybe so many harmful chemicals, but there was exposure to a lot of different toxins. That being said, it is imperative that your body is detoxifying. So if you breathe that coal dust in, it went into your bloodstream, and into your bloodstream, then it went through the liver, and it went through that phase 1, phase 2, phase 2.5, dumped into the bile duct, dumped into the small intestine, dumped into the toilet. And as long as those pathways were ample enough to deal with the amount of toxic exposure, I never became toxic, because you aren't what you eat, You aren't what you absorb, you are what you don't get rid of. So as long as I was on a daily or weekly basis getting rid of all the things that I was exposed to, then those things never stayed in my system and I never became quote unquote toxic. That is why there were less amounts of cancer back 300 years ago. And if you took out the factor of, of birth, deaths at birth, and deaths at early age, or deaths, below the age of 6, people were living just as long 300 years ago as they are now. So don't buy the excuse that we're getting more cancer because people are living longer, because that's not true. So uh, if you're getting rid of everything that you're exposed to on a weekly basis, then you're not getting them, you're not toxic. Well, what do you mean? How would I be toxic? Well, if I'm not getting rid of everything that I'm exposed to on a weekly basis, these toxins circulate through the blood, and I will either die or my body will shunt these toxins to my cells. And that's what happens. So toxins are not getting through the pathways because we're exposed to an overabundance of them, or the pathways aren't working correctly. So the toxins are shunted to a cell, and then those cells store toxins, heavy metals, poisons, chemicals, etc., etc., etc. So all these chemicals that we're exposed to are settled in the cells. That's how cancer starts. So 99% of the time, they don't cause cancer. And I could live to 120 years old and die, and then have somebody cut open a slice of my body, smear a cell slice onto a slide, and look at it under a microscope, an electron microscope, and say, wow, look at all these hydrocarbons. Look at that benzene that's in that cell. Look at the mercury. Look at the lead. Oh my gosh, this guy was full of toxins. But as long as it didn't interrupt any of the metabolic pathways, it didn't cause disease. Problem is, it interrupts the metabolic pathways a lot. And if it interrupts the metabolic pathway in the nucleus of the cell that is essential for cell replication, that's what's called cancer. So if mercury in my cell interrupts my cell replication cycle, it's caused cancer. So we need to detox. Well, how do we detox? Well, we have to improve phase 1, phase 2, phase 2.5, phase 3 detoxification pathways. And we do things like everything that I have you guys doing that will also help my cells push stuff back into the blood so it can detox. Now, my cells aren't always going to push things back into the blood. They're going to push things outside of the cell membrane. So remember, cells are this little round thing that has a membrane around it, and when we're getting rid of the toxins in that cell, it pushes it outside of that cell, outside through the cell membrane, into this space called the extracellular space. That's the space between the cells. The extracellular space is a fluid matrix with proteins and a bunch of junk that the cells just gave off because they're trying to clean themselves out. And then that extracellular space is drained by a open-ended capillary system called your lymph system, which you can think of as a storm sewer. So your cells are like houses that are throwing the garbage out into the street, and now the garbage has to be cleaned up and taken away. Otherwise, we just have a whole bunch of garbage sitting in our street, aka the extracellular spaces, and that doesn't make us feel good. So we could get a sick feeling, tired, sluggish, not feeling well, because we are detoxing very well the cells, but we're dumping it into the extracellular space. And if we have an overabundance that our lymphatics aren't draining well, then we could have sluggish feeling then. We could also have sluggish feeling if our lymphatics are working, but it's getting back to the liver, and phase 1, phase 2, phase 2.5 isn't working well, and we've talked about that a lot. That's why we use things like milk thistle and NRF2 accelerator and KEEP1 accelerator and PON1 assist and detox accelerator and phosphatidylcholine and some bitters and binders. And that's why we're doing all that stuff. So you got to look down the line. Is it a problem with the liver cell itself? Is it a problem with the liver getting it into the bile? Let's look a little farther back. Is it a problem with the lymphatic system being able to pick it up? Is it a problem with the toxins are getting to the lymphatic system, but it's not getting back to the blood? Well, how does the lymphatic system work? Well, the lymphatic system works by contraction of the muscle. So if all we're doing is sitting around on the couch, eating healthy bonbons, we're still not going to detox very well because we're not getting lymphatic drainage and lymphatic movement. But you said I'm doing the sauna, I'm doing the chi machine, I'm doing skin brushing, I'm doing exercising, I'm contracting muscles, but I'm feeling sluggish. You could be doing everything right. And the symptoms that you might be getting are because you're really doing a good job of cellular detoxification. And you're kind of overwhelming the liver, but you're doing everything right, and this too shall pass. And you kind of got to go through that a little bit too. So you might think about a couple things. Well, I've been doing this for a couple months and I'm still getting sluggish. You could slow down on some of those things and just take it easy. And maybe you're going too fast and overwhelming your liver. It's not that we need to support the liver anymore. We're just going too fast and overwhelming, and see if that makes a difference. But you got to look back at all the pathways and go, where am I maybe overdoing it? Where do I need some support? Maybe I don't need any support. I just need to drink some more water and cool off for a little bit. Try some of those things.
Okay, thank you. That's very good.
Dr. Connors?
Uh-huh.
This is Corky. Can you hear me okay?
I can.
Okay. How many minutes a day or every day or whatever should I use that little trampoline?
6.5. I'm only kidding. Sorry.
6.5 minutes?
Sorry. I'm sorry. There really isn't a time period. So using the trampoline is a great lymphatic detox tool. Mm-hmm. But it's something you got to work up to too, because if it's something you're new to, 6.5 minutes can be overwhelming. You got to go slow and get
mm-hmm.
up to it. So it's exercise. So there really isn't. Yeah, there is. You can over-exercise, right? That's not good.
Right.
But you could get up to a half hour a day. That'd be fantastic. So that's what I'd shoot for. I think that'd be a good thing to shoot for.
Okay. And then I have another question. Is that okay?
Uh-huh.
It seems as though my right arm is getting bigger. Is that because I'm not draining, or?
Most likely, yes. Either that or you got to stop pumping iron with your right arm and start doing both arms.
Yeah, right.
It's probably some lymphatic blockage. And next time you come in, because you're local here, we should check that.
Okay.
Yeah, so we might want to do the LBG and open that up. We want to check and see if there's any growth there in your lymphatics.
What's LBG? What's that?
That's a therapy we have, the lipid generator.
Oh, that one. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So do I need to make an appointment to see you then, or just
do that?
Change
so next time you come in, just tell Jen that you want to see me. So.
Okay. Okay. Is next week one day good for you?
I'll be here Monday through Thursday next week.
Okay.
So whichever day.
Okay,
works.
Sounds good. Okay, I'll be down.
A question came over chat. Any other questions from you, Corky?
I think I think not right this minute. I can't think. I had probably 10 or 12 when I called, but you know how it goes. I'll let somebody else ask.
A question came over the chat. Do you know anything why not to drink grapefruit juice when taking medication? Yes, it's because it blocks a specific pathway. I can't remember the metabolic pathway, but that's the reason. It actually accelerates that pathway and you actually lose the medication, from what I remember. So that's the grapefruit juice with medication, but I can't remember which pathway it is. Any other questions?
Dr. Connors, it's Lisa again.
Yeah, you already asked a question.
I know, just any closer to Florida?
No, we don't know what we're going to be able to do with that yet. It's just, it's hot down there. So no.
I know.
I don't know what we're going to be able. We're still really praying about it and what we're going to be able to do. So.
Hi.
All right. Anything else?
Is Michelle working on that presentation for the?
Oh yeah, that was the other question of yours, Sharon. Michelle is actually, she's doing her thesis on that. So she's putting a bunch of stuff together, and so we're actually going to turn it into a book. So that'll be good. But did you have any specific questions on that? Because
I just don't know my limits. Like for CBD oil, it's supposed to be helping with inflammation and pain, and I'm only taking 10 milligrams a day right now, and it's not helping with pain at all.
So 10 milligrams of CBD oil is really low.
Okay.
So that's where getting the higher dose CBD can be beneficial. And it can be, if you take a super, and then you don't necessarily have to take it every day. You just take it with dealing with breakthrough pain. So you can stay on a lower dose if you use the higher dose just to knock it down. But yeah, you're going to have to go some days maybe 10 times that dose.
Oh, okay. That's the problem.
So I'd bump it up, but I'd bump it up slowly to see what was going to work for you. And I know it gets kind of pricey.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll end there. It's been 45 minutes. Thanks for emailing those questions in, and Lisa, thanks for sharing yours because I forgot to put yours on here. So,
Thank you, Dr. Connors.
I will see you guys all next week, and keep using Facebook.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.